In this interview, it's all about mastering internet business with Internet Business Mastery co-founder, Mr. Jason Van Orden. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of TWiP Talks. I'm here with I guess you could say he's an unwitting influence and mentor of mine, Mr. Jason Van Orden. He's one of the forces behind a podcast called Internet Business Mastery and kind of a movement in the solopreneur entrepreneur space. And first of all, we're honored to have Jason on because he's an amazingly busy guy, as we all are. But this particular interview is not so much focused on photography or the aspects of photography, but more the business and inspiration and all that kind of stuff, which is right in his wheelhouse. So, Jason, enough of me talking. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Frederick. It's so great to be here. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, this is good. Like I was saying in that intro, I've been listening to you guys for a while, and it's your fault that I am doing. It's your fault that I'm doing what I'm doing here, because This Week in Photo, the whole TWiP network, all that stuff, in a lot of ways was inspired by your words and Jeremy's words directly from Internet Business Mastery, and this is
love hearing that.
Yeah, this is from years and years ago, right? You guys have been doing this for a long time, and you guys were that voice of wisdom and this was like when I was at Apple too. So this is, the voice of wisdom in my ear while I'm at work at Apple or in a commute or whatever. I'm like, okay, one day I'm going to do this. One day I'm going to do this. And then of course I pulled the trigger and here I am doing this. So
awesome.
So an official thank you to you for
absolutely. Yeah. Glad to play whatever small part we did. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I would suggest folks, and we'll link to, all your podcasts and all your presences online in the blog post for this episode. But I can't recommend enough that people, if you're at all interested in learning more about, business and online business and growing audiences and being inspired and all that stuff, to go check out your stuff. So we'll push people over to that.
Awesome. Thank you. So
let's jump into this conversation. One of the main things I wanted to talk about is just that mindset jump, going from the idea of I am a corporate person and I am, I'm in it to win it. I'm part of this army for this particular corporation. I'm a cog in the wheel and I love it because I'm well lubricated, right? Which means I'm well compensated. So I'm happy turning my little gear or pulling my lever every day. But when you make that shift to go from being a corporate person to solopreneur, tell me about like some of the things that people can, do to shift their mindset into that, okay, I'm going alone type space.
Right. Yeah, there's been a lot of mindset shifts along the way. And I think, one of the initial things is just really stopping to ask yourself, well, what is it that you want out of life? I mean, if we have this one life to live, what is it that you want to create for yourself? What is it that will fulfill you most? What is the purpose you want to live? And it's really owning the fact that it is up to you and you do have opportunity and control of those things. And, I was operating under society had taught me there's this one script that I follow. I go to college. Oh, I'm good at math. I guess I'll be an engineer and I'll go and get a good job with a stable paycheck and do the responsible thing so I can raise a family and retire one day. Right.
Yeah.
It didn't make me happy. Like very, very quickly, I was less than a year into and I even thought that I had done the right thing and balanced it. I mean, I was a musician. I loved playing music. I was serious. I was like, oh, if I can make that happen, awesome. But I need to have this other stable paycheck as well. And so I went and worked for a company that made gear for guitarists. And I was a guitarist. So I'm like, this is great. I get to do both. Right. And, it had its kind of shininess, but that sheen wore off really fast when I realized, I was just the cog in the wheel and I was being micromanaged and I was, being told what it is that I could or couldn't work on. And I had a wake up call one day when a friend called me and said, I don't have much time to talk, but I've just been let go. He was in the human resources. So we worked together at the same company. I've just been let go. They want me to get out of the building right away. So I'll have to talk to you later. Boom. He was gone. And then the phone rang next to me in engineering and a friend got up and went, talked to the manager, came back with the box, loaded up his stuff and out he went. Phone on the other side rang, right? And I'm like, wait a second. this paycheck's not so secure as I'm telling myself, right? Somebody else controls whether or not I keep this job. Somebody else controls what I do on a daily basis. And I am giving up my time. I'm wholesaling my time to somebody else to do something I'm in the end not that passionate about, right? And so that was one of the first wake-up calls. Now, it took me a while to figure out that there was another path and how to make that path happen. And for me, that meant going into being a business owner. But it started with like, well, what is it that I'm missing? Why? I mean, I was waking up even at this point depressed to go to work. Like I was not happy. And so I was asking like, what's missing? I was so happy when I was going to university. Do I need to go back and be a professor? Do I need to go and get an MBA? Like, what do I got to do here? And realizing that, a bunch of student debt and just going back and following the same scripts was not going to get me where I wanted. And so, I had to dive into learning a lot. And I never saw myself as being an entrepreneur, but that day I realized I'm unemployable and I need to go and take control of this and figure out how to make it work for myself. So, that was a big mindset shift for me.
Yeah, but then that mindset shift, it takes a lot of courage to do that. I mean, granted, there was a boot coming, right? You can see, like you're saying, the bombs are going off around you and the cubicles around you. So at some point you're like, okay, do I jump out with my parachute or do I wait to get bombed or whatever?
Right.
But then that's one thing. But what if you're comfortable in your job, right? Yeah. And you know that there's a ton of other stuff that you could be doing. You're online, you see all these other people, you see, you're successful online, you see the Pat Flynn's, the John Lee Dumas's, everybody, right? They're doing all this cool stuff online, the YouTuber generation, all these people are doing these cool things and making obscene amounts of money online. And you're like, okay, I think I have something to offer to the world, but I have a mortgage, I have a car payment, I got a kid. Right. And even though I'm only getting paid X thousands of dollars a year, I know that I'm going to get paid that. Even if, like you said, it's a fallacy, that, you can get axed any quarter when they figure out, okay, we got to trim some fat to appease the shareholders. But still, when you're in it and it feels like it's I've been in it and you've been in it. It feels like it's a mile. It's on the horizon. It's like when you're a kid and you're never going to grow up, right? When you're a kid, you're like, I'm never going to be an adult. That's so far away. And then boom, you're there. If you're in that comfort mindset and it's hard to see the horizon, how do you get to the comfort mindset so that you can pull the trigger and become that solopreneur?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the truth is, being somebody who's now taught entrepreneurs for over 10 years, I think you have to be feeling the pain enough in order to finally, because we do, as human beings, we get very complacent, we get very comfortable. And even when we do see somebody else who's seemingly achieved a dream that we would love to aspire to, or maybe we're jealous of it, and that tells us something about maybe what we want or wish we would do for ourselves. I told a very shrunk story a small version of my story there. But the truth is, like, that was 3 years of me working as an engineer, a year to start realizing, whoa, I'm depressed, and another 2 years to finally have that pain. There was the story of the layoffs. Yes, there was me waking up every morning, hitting snooze 5 times before I would go to work. Yes, there was me reading Robert Kiyosaki and going, oh, wait, that's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and going, whoa, wait, there is another way in the world to go here. It still took me a while to get to the pain point enough where I was like, that's it, I'm out of here. And eventually I did. I had to sit down and go, okay, this is, I'm not happy at all. Like, I guess it was hitting rock bottom, really. Yep. And that's just the sad truth of human beings sometimes, is that that's what it takes for us. However, in that moment, I did finally have to go, okay, so why haven't I pulled the trigger yet? Why haven't I started something else? Why haven't I figured this out? And so I finally sat down with my wife and we had a frank conversation, and we wrote down like 9 different fears that I was having. And first of all, it was really insightful just to put those on the page, So I think that's one thing is that you got to just ask yourself, like, what are the fears? What are the things that are keeping me from moving forward? And naming them has a lot of power. But then, like, for each of those, we asked ourselves, like, okay, well, okay, let's say that fear does come true. Like, what would that look like? And actually, I mean, a lot of times we try to avoid thinking about these things and we just push them back. And actually, that's when they end up controlling us the most. But by bringing them forward, naming them, and actually allowing the reality to play out in our mind a little bit, like, what if that did happen? What would we do? And having a bit of a game plan, or knowing that it's like, actually, the likelihood of that happening is not that great. Yeah. And in the end, like, the seeing it all on the page, the fears on the page did not outweigh the pain I was feeling on a daily basis doing something that was not true to myself. Yeah. And so that's when I quit my job.
Wow.
And I went in and I gave him 2 weeks notice, and I was out of there. And I actually still didn't have, I had some ideas of what I would do, but I wasn't bringing money in. Now, I'm not saying that's what everybody has to do, but I reached a breaking point, and at cold turkey, I was out of there. I was done.
It's kind of like what they say, it's time to burn the ships, right?
Yeah, and in many ways I was doing that, yeah.
All right, let's switch gears. I feel like we could talk about that forever. That's a whole show in of itself, just right. that mindset shift. But let's talk about the evolution of internet business mastery. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it was one of the first, when I started moving into this mindset of like, I really like this stuff. Because I love marketing, I love online stuff, I love how dynamic everything is, and everything's always changing. And then I found your podcast, and then of course I went on the binge, right, and started listening to, nice. to everything you guys are doing, and then subscribed, of course. But let's talk about that. So when you guys started the podcast, what was going in? What was the goal of it when you first kicked it off?
So this is really interesting. Yeah. I mean, obviously we're skipping forward in my story, but in 2005, I had found myself online needing to sell a training that I had created online. This is really neither here nor there, but it happened to be a training for creative real estate investors. And it was a marketing training to teach them how to use direct mail to find buyers and sellers. Mm-hmm. And so I was going online to find other creative real estate investors to buy this. This is before Facebook and before Twitter and before social media, and in fact, before podcasting, except for then in 2005, podcasting did show up on my radar. And just because I had my ear to the ground, I was like, well, what's working? What's new? What is there to get the word out about whatever your business is? Yeah. And I hadn't heard of podcasting, and I did a search on Google, and Google didn't know what podcasting was either yet, though I did manage to find a couple blog posts. And it really spoke to me because, I didn't enjoy being an engineer, but I still liked tech. And here it was, a new technology for distributing content online. Having been a musician, I enjoyed the audio aspect of it. I discovered at this point that I was very good at teaching, and I loved teaching. I discovered at this point I enjoyed marketing, and I was good at marketing. And so podcasting was just a great, so I did a lot of self-discovery of like, what are the factors and things I'm good at that I want to bring into my daily life? And podcasting was a channel that just kind of met all of those things. Yeah. Now, we can look now 10 years later and go, wow, well, podcasting has really grown and everyone's excited about podcasting. Back then, like, nobody knew what it was. Yeah. And essentially we were taking a chance. Like I after 3 or 4 months of thinking it through and going, I'm really intrigued by this podcasting thing, I finally just made a decision. I said, look, I want to be the guy that businesses turn to when they want to know how to use podcasting to build a brand, to bring in leads, to market themselves. Because everybody that was messing around with it was mostly kind of a hobby thing. I'm like, well, I'm going to crack the code on how this works for business. Yep. And in order to do that, I needed to start 2 or 3 podcasts of my own.
Nice.
And one of them just happened to be Internet Business Mastery. And the truth is, like, we weren't setting it out like going, oh, this is going to be, a big business that's going to make us millions of dollars, although it has now. Yeah. We were simply just fascinated by the technology, curious about it, following that curiosity and going, hey, you and I already get on the phone already to talk about our businesses and what's working and what's not. Why don't we just record these conversations and put it out as this podcast thing? Maybe other people will enjoy it. And it turns out that they did. Yeah. So the point being is, not that, there was a bit of right place, right time, but I think we took fast action on something that was fascinating and curious to us and felt like it had the potential to move the needle for just learning new things about internet marketing. And it just so happens it took off. And there's a number of reasons for that. If you want, we can talk about, but it was, that's what kind of led us into doing the podcast.
And then you write a book? You wrote a book on podcasting as well, right?
Yeah. So, and I'm making this sound that's like, oh, I'm going to be the foremost expert on podcasting. Here we go. Like I said, it was actually like a lot of deliberation to apply myself to that. I had just moved to New York City, very expensive city, from Salt Lake City, big difference in cost of living. My business was still kind of a fledgling business. I had to make money. Like, I didn't have time to waste on something that wouldn't work. Yeah. And I was going on a hunch that podcasting was going to grow. And that was a scary thing. But I did decide to go all in, and I created a tutorial online because nobody had made a nice, concise, here's easy for the layman to follow tutorial. That led to a publisher asking me to write a book about podcasting. That led to speaking at conferences. That led to doing $2,000 coaching courses online about podcasting. So bit by bit, over a year or so, everything I'd set out to do, become a foremost expert in business podcasting, happened. Yep. And it just so happened that as a process of that, Internet Business Mastery started taking off as well.
Crazy. That's crazy how, that's life, right? You have to, again, you said in the beginning, you have to take risks and a leap of faith. But sometimes it's just exploration. Like you said, I'm interested in this thing. I'm going to go try it out and see how it goes. And from that, all this other magic spawned, right? So IBM and millions of dollars and all that stuff came from what was essentially kind of a tangent in your mind of, okay, I want to learn more about this. And
it was a curiosity.
Yeah. Whereas if you were the guy that said, you know what, that'll go somewhere one day and I'll figure it out, none of this would have happened, or it would maybe it would have happened, but it would have happened in an entirely different way. Right. So
somebody else might have done it before I did,
Exactly. But kudos for 10 years ago, having the foresight to, and maybe it wasn't foresight. A lot of it, some of it's luck, right? Who knows where this stuff's going to go, but just to have the wherewithal back then to try something new. Because when you tried it, you had no crystal ball. You didn't know how iPhones and iPods and all that stuff were going to take off, and that everyone was going to have a supercomputer in their pocket to be able to consume all kinds of media. But now that you've planted that seed back then, you have an oak tree today to harvest, whereas people that are planting their trees today, they could still be successful, but they'll never have the root system that you built, right? Because you started early on. So on the podcasting side of things, and I put you up in the category of podcasting and online social media expert, all that stuff. So there's a lot of things out there. So we've got, when you decide to go into business for yourself, you get, okay, I got to learn about email marketing. Is it Aweber or MailChimp or Constant Contact? Okay, now I got to podcasting. I want to do a podcast. How do I get my podcast submitted? And what about art for it? And what's the flow? And how do I record and edit and all that? And then on the social media side, okay, what do I pay attention to? Is it Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, Periscope, all these different services that are up there that come at you when you decide to be a solopreneur or an entrepreneur online? How do you manage that stuff personally? Do you pick and choose, or do you just, okay, I'm going to do everything and see what grows?
Okay, well, so this is a great question. Actually, something that I like thinking a lot about lately, because I've seen a lot of people really get hurt by the fact of feeling like they should do this or they should do that, or they're trying to copy somebody else that they look up to, or they're trying to do too much at the same time, and they end up being demotivated, or things don't quite work for them because they are pursuing either too much or the wrong things. And I've already given a couple of the principles that guide me when it comes to picking these platform strategies, and one is experimentation, and the other one is following my curiosity and fascination. Let me give you an example of that. I mean, that's what I was doing with podcasting, right? I'm starting a new brand right now, so separate from Internet Business Mastery. It targets a different audience, and so in some ways I'm starting from scratch here. In many ways, I'm starting from scratch, and I'm planning out very carefully because I want to write a book, and I want that book to be a bestseller. But I need to have a community and a platform behind it if it's going to become a bestseller. Yep. So earlier this year, I had to ask myself, what is my first move for starting this platform going to be? I need to build an audience. Is it an email list? Is it Twitter? Is it Facebook? Is it podcasting? And certainly all the shoulds came to my mind. Well, you got to have a blog. You got to have an email list. Everybody has a blog. Everybody has the email list. And in the end, I started a Facebook group. And in fact, that's all I've been focusing on in the last 2 months. And it's growing quite rapidly. Now, I'm not saying the answer is go start a Facebook group. What I'm saying is I asked myself, what am I most intrigued to try out right now? And it came back to me, Facebook group. Now, there's a number of strategic reasons behind that. It's leveraging a social platform that everybody's on every day anyway. There's all these things that Facebook does to make it mobile friendly and bring people back every single day. Yep. It has a tendency to grow itself in a way that an email list doesn't. Now, I'm going to have an email list. I have to have an email list. Eventually that will be in there, but I've just started with the Facebook group. So follow and it was like, let's experiment. Let's see what's happened. And it's worked incredibly well. So take fast action on something that you're fascinated and curious about, and don't get so hung up on, well, so-and-so does this, so I have to do the same thing, right?
Yep.
There was I could come up with 20 reasons why it was stupid to start with a Facebook group. And it turns out it was just right for me. The other thing is stop trying to do everything. Choose 2 channels and just start with 2 channels, okay? You cannot be on every single channel when you're starting out. In fact, until you get good systems and at least a part-time team, like, at least like a part-time assistant or somebody helping you out, trying to do more than 2 channels is going to kill you. It's going to wear you out. It's going to burn you out. So right now it's Facebook group for me and Periscope. Those are the 2 that I'm focusing on. And again, that's just for me. That's what I'm fascinated by. That's what I'm curious about. That's what I feel naturally driven to do. So that maybe that offers a few insights about how I think about these things. And then from there, I'll span off and I'm going to start the email list and start tacking on other things and build up a team to help support that. But I'm not worried about those other things right now. I've got my blog that's been sitting there. I haven't updated it for 2 years, and I've let that guilt go, and I'm just focusing on my Facebook group, and it's working wonderfully.
I love it. Focus. There's 2 things you said in there. You said focus and take fast action. And I think the take fast action piece was one of the things that resonated with me when I first started listening to Internet Business Mastery, was you guys drilled home the whole idea that there's people that look and dream and think all the time. And then there's people that look, dream, think, and act, and then fail, and then get up again and try again and again and again and keep moving forward. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just the whole mindset of act, forward momentum versus standing in one spot? Yeah.
So entrepreneurs, we naturally thrive, I think, on forward motion and momentum. I think anybody who has dabbled with or had success with entrepreneurship, they know that when they're not, I'm the kind of person that I start the day with a blank slate, and if I don't earn so many forward momentum points during the day, I feel very antsy by the end of the day. And that achievement, it drives that achiever drive. Fuels me. Now, obviously, I have to be careful to not have it burn me out either. At the same time, I'll tell you, I'm a perfectionist. So believe it or not, my natural tendency, if I'm not careful, is to research, and then try to pick the absolutely best choice. I'm the one that goes to a restaurant and I have to look at everything on the menu and by process of elimination, find the one perfect thing tonight to eat, which is actually the opposite of a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs are what we call quick starts, hit the gas pedal. They look at the menu, they go, I feel like chicken. Okay, this is a good chicken dish. I'll take that. And they haven't, they didn't look at 80% of the menu. So the truth is I'm kind of in the minority, and I've had to be very aware of that and learn how to hedge against that by having people to keep me accountable, by knowing how to, sometimes put out their deadlines and commitments that make me have to take action, even if it's at the last minute and imperfect action, because I've made a commitment to somebody or to my audience. That keeps me from going into that endless cycle of perfectionism, because I love to just learn and find the perfect way. So as much as I'm sitting here talking about fast action, I have to very much concentrate on making that my default norm. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who takes so much action, they make so many messes, and they don't focus because they're constantly ping-ponging around to the next thing. So you got to know, who are you? What style are you? Where do you fall in that spectrum? And now how can you have the people, the support, the systems to protect you against yourself and your natural tendency? And self-awareness is so huge as entrepreneurs, right? So, Strengths Finder 2.0 is something we talk a lot about on Internet Business Mastery. It's a very inexpensive book backed by science that you can go and take and find out what your top strengths are. Awesome. The Colby assessment, I absolutely love. It tells you if you're a quick start, or if you're a heavy on systems, or if you're somebody who thinks out of the box and doesn't like systems. It tells you if you're a fact finder researcher, or if you're like, hey, just give me the minimum and off I go. And there's no right or wrong. You have to know who you are and give yourself permission to do that. And then know it's 2 sides of the coin. Here's the strength. Here's the weakness. Focus on the strength, but set up the systems and the things that are going to help protect you from the potential of also slipping off to the other side of the spectrum and holding you back as well.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up, but I got to ask I have to ask you these questions about Internet Business Mastery as the kingmaker, right? So
the kingmaker,
the kingmaker. So what I mean by that is, there's several podcasts and online personalities that are inspiring out there, and they're doing cool things, and you see their numbers, and it's like, okay, if I could just have 10% of that, I'd be awesome,
Right.
And some of those names are like Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income, John Lee Dumas, who does, a phenomenal job crushing doing a podcast interview every single day for the last, I don't know, millennium or something. But, and you could trace their roots back to you. Right. And what you guys have done, how does that make you feel to be, you're young. You're still, it's not like you're like this old dude. It's like, oh yeah, back in the day, you're still in the mix. I mean, you're as young as the rest of the guys that you king made. And how does that feel? It's got to be satisfying.
Yeah, it's pretty satisfying. I mean, yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say it was incredibly satisfying. I mean, it's exciting to see the internet moves very, very fast. And again, having been around in 10 years in this industry, I noticed that it's like there's kind of like this. Every 3 years, there's like this new generation, right? And there's always new people coming up and making a name for themselves and doing very interesting things. And people can rise and fall very quickly on the internet. Yeah. And I think it was Clay Collins, founder of Lead Pages, that first, when we had him on I think it was on our show, we had him, and he brought it up. He's like, somebody needs to make a genealogy chart. And that goes back to internet business mastery.
Totally. That's what I have in my head, like a Darwinian
mastery, smart passive income, eventual millionaire, John Lee Dumas, and then it comes over here and that you could trace this. Now, I'm not taking responsibility for the success of these people. They're responsible for their own success, but it is incredibly gratifying when you hear people like Cliff Ravenscraft or Jamie Tardy, or she goes by Jamie Masters now, or Chris Ducker, or people like that saying like, yeah, I mean, you guys inspired me, or it was your course that got me started. You were the originals. It's you that I modeled, and now people are modeling people that modeled us, and that is very, very fulfilling. And I guess. It's funny. I mean, it's gratifying to hear you say that. Often I don't think I stop to give myself, to let that sink in quite enough, really.
Because you're still moving. You're still moving forward.
Still moving forward. Still got to have the momentum. I'm always looking at the next thing. But that's what I love about being an entrepreneur and helping people become influencers. Is it pays forward very quickly. Yeah. The value you create impacts somebody, and they go and create value, and that impacts somebody, and then they go and create value, and that's a wonderful ecosystem to be a part of. I absolutely love it.
I love it. All right, before we take off, you mentioned this new business that you're doing. The Facebook group. That's what is that? Are you able to share it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I asked myself a year ago, what is the work that I'm fascinated and curious about moving forward? And I'm still doing Internet Business Mastery, which has largely been focused on beginner entrepreneurs. Yep. Moving forward, I really am fascinated about helping people who are very good at their craft, very good at what they do, whether it's photography, whether it's therapy, for married couples, whether it's the fact that they've been a project manager for 15 years and they're just really good at systems and things like that. And they've had success doing that. They've kind of done their 10,000 hour mastery, right? Mm-hmm. And they have their platform out there, but now they're looking at like the big influencers on the internet in their market and going, you know what? I want more reach. I want bigger opportunities. I want a bigger impact with what I do. And so they're looking for the secrets to now take what they've already done and exponentially grow that to the next level. And so I'm working on a book that's kind of like Think and Grow Rich. But here's where it's different. I say that in that Napoleon Hill, when he wrote Think and Grow Rich, he went out and interviewed across the board lots of wealthy and successful people to figure out and codify, here's how they think and behave in order to be successful and wealthy. I want to do that, but very specifically for what I call self-made influencers who have used the internet to grow themselves to become an influential person and now leverage that to make incredible income, but also have a big impact in the world. Awesome. And so that way, anybody, no matter what channel you're using, podcasting, blogging, YouTube, whatever, no matter what your niche is, you've got this across the board summary of this is what it is codified. This is what it means to be an influencer on the internet. And I can just apply these 7 pillars to a way that feels good to me and get those kinds of results and that kind of impact. And so as I work on this book, as I research, as I share my insights, I formed this this Facebook group as a place to talk about these topics, people who are influencers who want to become bigger influencers. And the end game, I don't know if there's any end game, but one big goal there is to write and release this book.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Congratulations on that. I need that.
Thank you.
So can I join? Where do I go to join the Facebook group?
Yeah, go to joinimpact.net and that will forward to Facebook. It's a private Facebook group, so you just hit request to join and then that allows you into the community. It's growing very quickly. It's only been around for a few weeks, but we're growing at about a rate of about 100 people a week. And I haven't even really kicked in the big guns of growing that community. But regardless of it being like 500 or 600 people right now, there's a lot of great interaction there. And I do regular Periscopes and regularly share content through the group as well.
I want to see how you're using Periscope, because that's
awesome. Yeah.
That's a nut I want to crack. Like how do you use Periscope, aside from just sharing crazy stuff, I would love to see how you're doing that. Cool.
Absolutely. Joinimpact.net.
Joinimpact.net. And then Internet Business Mastery, where should people go to check that out?
InternetBusinessMastery.com is our free podcast for beginning entrepreneurs.
Awesome. Jason, thank you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's been an honor chatting with you. Obviously, I'm a little nervous because I'm chatting with one of my mentors.
Oh, you did. That's great. I loved it. It's a great conversation.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. And TWiP listeners, be sure to check out Internet Business Mastery and joinimpact.net. I'll be joining that today.
Awesome. Thanks, Frederick.
All right. You're welcome.